Hello and welcome to another episode of the Iraqi Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Juma Iraqi, and today I'm joined by Dr. Carl Juneau from Canada. Carl, how are you doing today?
Hey Juma, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, so it's an honor to be on.
Thank you so much for the kind words, and it's my pleasure to have you on the show. So, we're going to talk about periodization specifically for muscle hypertrophy today. Before we start, I just want to mention that you can choose to watch this podcast on YouTube, but you can also find it now on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and also iTunes as well. So, Carl, before we dive into the questions, could you give us an introduction about yourself so people get a chance to know you better?
Yes, I'd love to do that. So I got started, like many people, I think, doing sports when I was younger. At age 6, I saw the movie Robin Hood, the one with Kevin Costner. And I thought Robin Hood was pretty cool, you know? And he was doing archery, so I wanted to be like him. So I started doing archery when I was 6. I did that between ages 6 and 17, eventually becoming number 7th in Canada for juniors. And at age 16, my coach introduced me to weight training. So the idea was that I could train, get stronger, and pull a heavier bow. I stopped shooting, I stopped archery, but I kept lifting because as a kid, I was pretty skinny, insecure, and a little self-conscious about my body. And I would notice that the tall, athletic, and muscular guys would get all the attention and the respect, and that it was like a visceral feeling when people saw them. So I wanted to be a little more like these guys. So I kept lifting weights. Became very interested in the topic. I wanted to find the shortcuts or the better ways to do it since I wasn't really gifted genetically. So I ended up doing a bachelor in exercise sciences and later a PhD, a master's and PhD in public health with a specialization in exercise and health statistics. We call that epidemiology. And during the day, I would do epidemiology, and during the night or afternoons, I was still very interested in building muscle and keeping up with the research, using all the statistics knowledge I gained studying epidemiology and helping me understand the better ways to build muscle. And at the same time, I worked as a personal trainer. I've been a trainer for the Canadian Forces as well. So I've trained one-on-one about 300 people. And I built from 2009 the biggest website in French on building muscle. So over the internet, I ended up coaching about 4,000 people. We have a Facebook page with 115,000 fans. So it's been a big website, and I've been able to be in touch with and learn from a lot of guys wanting to build muscle. So this really kept me focused on the field and kept me sharp on, what are the best ways to do it. So I'm excited to talk about this with you today.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Now, I don't know how it is in Canada. Is it a big sport to be competing in, like doing archery, or
archery? Not at all. No. The number one country in the world for archery, or at least when I used to compete, was Korea. Mm-hmm. I think the Japanese are pretty good as well. For many sports, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that, they're not well known. Olympic athletes, especially in Canada, they're very poor. Mm-hmm. And unless you're doing, the 100-meter sprint, or I'm trying to think of a few high profile, like very few sports are well known and are high profile, but the other ones, like, can you name the current world champion in archery? Like, no one knows that guy, and he's probably training like every waking hours he has, and he's been doing that for like 25 or 30 years, and nobody knows him. So no, it's not a big sport.
Yeah. Yeah, I figure that because you guys do great in ice hockey.
Ice hockey, yeah.
We, on the other hand, don't do as well in ice hockey, and we don't do
Uh-huh.
as well in soccer, even though
Yeah.
they're big sports here in Norway. But
Uh-huh.
like everything is focused on the cross country skiing in Norway,
Exactly,
and if
yeah.
you look at the Olympics now, like
Uh,
Norwegian are like kicking ass with I
Congratulations.
think they have 13 gold medals now and 33 medals in total. And it's amazing when there's like 5 million people living in this country.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's
yeah.
insane.
Well, you have the right conditions, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have a lot of
exactly.
snow, yeah.
Exactly. But even like if there was a report a couple of years ago looking at VO2 maxes
Yeah.
of different soccer players here in Norway, and there's like the average team. It's called Rosenborg. They
Mhm.
have like the highest average VO2 max of all the teams in Europe. So
Wow.
it was pretty impressive. So it's like it's in the genes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah. All right, let's dive into the questions, and just so people understand what we are talking about, could you
Yeah.
please just briefly explain what periodization is? Some people often ask, well, what does macros and meso and microcycles actually mean? Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, I'd love to. So periodization is just basically planning training over time. And the macro, meso, and micro cycles are different cycles of training that change in duration. So depending on which author you're reading, you'll see different definitions. For macro cycle, usually we're talking about any time between 1 and 4 years. The Olympic macro cycle is 4 year long, and the goal here is to have the athlete peak at the Olympics. So the training would be planned out 4 years in advance. A mesocycle is anything between 1 to 3 months. This is my definition. You might find something else elsewhere. And a microcycle most often is a week, but it could be 5 to 10 days. So sometimes we'll see slightly shorter or longer microcycles.
Excellent. Now, it's very common to talk about periodization when we're talking about strength training. Not that common to talk about it in regards to muscle hypertrophy, even though people do some sort of periodization. But could you tell us what's the main differences between periodizing for strength gains compared to periodizing for muscle hypertrophy?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll say that the two will be pretty similar because you're still lifting weights, you're still training to make progress, and we'll get back to this. But the number one thing that should guide all your periodization and your training is making progress. You know, that's the reason you're training for. When you periodize for strength, you want to improve your strength, whereas when you periodize for hypertrophy, you want to improve your hypertrophy. So you're still lifting weights. The main difference will be that we're going to put a little more emphasis on volume. So we know that volume is a key driver of muscle gain. And the number one way we're going to do this is doing slightly higher reps. So for strength, usually people will train between 1 and 5 or maybe 6 reps, whereas for hypertrophy, people will train usually between 6 to 12 reps. So doing sets with more reps helps you build up volume in a more efficient way. And since volume is a driver of hypertrophy, this is going to be your number one difference when you periodize for hypertrophy versus when you periodize for strength.
Excellent. Now, very good that you mentioned this with volume, and that we see in the literature that the main driver of muscle hypertrophy is volume. And there's you probably read it, the study by Brad Schoenfeld, where he compared lower reps and higher reps, but
Yeah,
the volume was equated.
yeah.
Yeah, and they basically saw the same results, but the difference was that when you're doing lower reps, you still see gains, but it's more taxing on the body. So by doing more repetitions, you were able to potentially do actually more volume that way.
Yes, in the same time frame, and
Mm-hmm.
that was another big takeaway from that study is they gained the same amount of muscle, if I remember well, but the hypertrophy style workouts was finished in about 18 minutes, whereas the strength style workouts took about an hour. So they got the same gains, but the workouts were 3 times shorter. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to do more reps. It's more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we're on this topic, let's just add in, like, let's talk about training frequency, because I know that's a very popular thing to talk about. Like, there's are you familiar with the Norwegian Frequency Project?
I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, heard a lot about it, but never seen it because it's
No,
never been
no, it
published.
seems no one has seen it. I think it was published very recently, but I'm not sure about that. But I have seen, I've heard about it a lot. Yeah.
I think Brad Schoenfeld had a paper now that like replicated the design of the Norwegian Frequency Project, if I'm not
Okay.
if I'm remember correctly, and
Yeah.
basically they didn't see the same results
Hmm.
as they saw in the Norwegian Frequency Project. But
Hmm.
like, if we were to like talk specifically about muscle growth, what seems
Yeah.
to be the optimal training frequency?
Okay, well, talking about Schoenfeld, he's published a meta-analysis in 2016 looking at this that a lot of people will be familiar with, I'm sure. So they found that 2 to 3 workouts a week were better than 1 workout a week. So that's the best answer we got at this point from the science. Now, as a coach, you also want to make your decisions based on the field. So it's not just about the science, but it's also about your own experience and what works best for your clients. And a little bit later, we can talk about a model I've prepared for this podcast. And in my opinion, when you're training a beginner, it makes more sense to train 3 times a week each muscle group. And I've found that this works well to build muscle. And based on what we know from the science, it sure will work better than training each muscle just once a week.
Excellent. Now, one of the things that was interesting from the Schoenfeld meta-analysis was that they actually, like, a typical thing that you see with people nowadays is that they say, "Oh, you're an idiot because you're training your muscles only once a week." But still,
Yeah.
you can see some results from training each muscle group once a week, but it's probably a good idea to have a higher frequency. So, like you mentioned, 2 to 3 times a week. One thing that I think people emphasize too much on it,
Hmm.
because it just makes sense that as you progress and you need more volume in your training, it's more important to actually split it up more during the week, because you're not going to be able to handle that amount of volume in each session.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would like to make another comment, which is, the science and the studies are generally carried out on relatively untrained people or beginners, maybe intermediates. The guys you see advocate once a week training are elite bodybuilders. These guys will train with higher volumes in the same session. They lift heavier weights. So maybe for them, it's actually the best way to go. We cannot tell from the science. Another point on these bodybuilders is they're older. And as people get older, I've found that they cannot train as frequently as 18 years old college subjects, in the studies. So maybe they have a point, and I don't think we should dismiss them and just say, here's this meta-analysis. You're training once a week, you're dumb. That's not the way it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree, and that's why it sometimes pisses me off when, like people read research and then they'll say, well, bodybuilders are stupid, and they'll just say that, oh, bodybuilders just get the result because they use enough gear. But
Yeah.
like if you actually know how things work, you know that's not the case. Like you could take a ton of gear and still not make any progress. But yeah, let's move forward with how do you set up a successful periodization? Like, what are the fundamentals to setting up successful periodization for muscle growth?
Right. So we're going to be talking about training variables, and we're going to be changing those over time. So the variables that we're going to be talking about are frequency, and we've just pretty much covered that one, exercises, reps, sets, rest between sets, and training to failure. I can jump in straight into the model and explain how I think a beginner and then an intermediate lifter should play with these variables over time to make progress as fast as possible.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with a beginner, and then we move forward after that.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I want to do before we start is talk about who we're talking about, because in training, a lot depends on who your client is. So the model I'll present today is for an average male. We're going to call him Joe. Joe is 18 years old. He's just beginning, and he has no injuries or diseases that we would have to take into account while creating his program. Okay, so he's the typical beginner male trainer. Next, I say Joe is a beginner, and I think there's a lot of confusion when I listen to podcasts or I read articles. People are not sure what a beginner is, and you can have two people discussing training, and they both are talking about a beginner, but they haven't agreed on what actually a beginner is. And I struggled with that myself a long time, and I want to tip my hat off to Ripito and Baker. They wrote a great book called Practical Programming for Strength Training that I will draw from a little bit today. This is probably the best book on periodization that I've read for strength training. And here's how they define a beginner. A beginner is anyone who can make progress every workout. So this is, I found really elegant, this definition, because it's tied to something that's measurable in the gym. Are you making progress or you're not? If you're making progress every workout, you're a beginner. And as long as you can train and make progress every workout, these are like the newbie gains. Well, first, life is beautiful. And second, you're still a beginner. When your program stops making you gains every workout, you're going to have to change strategies and aim to make progress every week. And at that point, you're an intermediate lifter. So this is how I would define beginners and intermediates, and the definition comes straight out of the book. So I wanted to make this clear from the get-go.
Excellent. Now, I'm so glad that you touched upon the definition of beginners, because usually what people do when they're trying to define if one is a beginner, intermediate, or advanced is ask them, how many years have you been training?
Exactly.
But you can have been training for 10 years and still be a beginner if you haven't had any productive workouts.
Absolutely. And even people who have been training for a long time, I try and put them on a beginner program. And I will see if I can get some newbie gains out of them for maybe just 3 or 4 weeks. But if I can put someone on a simple program that lets them make gains every workout, then this is amazing. And I will keep them on that program as long as I can, because the whole point is making gains.
Excellent. So we talked about the definition for a beginner, which is making progress every week.
Yeah.
And then intermediate was making progress every month.
Intermediate is beginner is every workout. Intermediate is every week.
Hmm.
And maybe the question you're asking is what is an advanced
Exactly.
trainee, right? If I remember correctly from the book, it was every month, but they propose many different mesocycles for advanced level athletes. And the idea there would be to make a small gain every mesocycle. So that could be every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, something like that.
Excellent. Now, continue with talking about the model that you were mentioning.
Sure. Okay. So we're starting out with a beginner. This is Joe. He's 18 years old, just starting out, no disease. Frequency, we're going to put him on a 3 workouts a week program, and we're going to train his whole body every workout. So he's training every muscle 3 times a week. He's doing the same workout 3 times a week. I'm keeping it simple. Actually, a tentative title for this presentation would have been, simple periodization for muscle hypertrophy, because I think a lot of trainers overcomplicate training. And when you're starting out, it doesn't need to be complicated. Just focus on making progress, and the template I'm going to give you now should let you do that. So Joe is just starting out, training 3 times a week. The exercises are going to be pretty basic as well. So I will give the set of 7 exercises I generally recommend to beginners. If you don't like these exercises, you can do exercises you like. You don't have to do these. I've just found that these work well. So the exercises in order for that workout will be squat, bench press, and bent over row. So with the bench press and the bent over row, we're covering horizontal pushing and pulling. Next, we're going to have deadlift, shoulder press, and chin up. So with those, we're going to cover vertical pushing and pulling. And we finish with an exercise for abs, and you can pick your favorite for that one. With the squats, we're going to hit more of the anterior chains, so that these will be the quads. And with the deadlifts, we're going to hit more of the posterior chains, so these will be the, I found the words, I remember the words in French. I learned anatomy in French. The glutes and the back of the legs. Oh, I'm forgetting because this is a podcast. The back of the legs in English. But then we call those the posterior chains.
Mm-hmm.
So your major muscle groups are covered with these exercises. And again, you can do your favorite ones if you prefer, as long as you cover horizontal pushing and pulling and vertical pushing and pulling and quads and the back posterior chain. The next variable we're going to look at are reps. So for reps, we talked about strength and hypertrophy. We said that when you train for hypertrophy, you're going to do slightly higher reps. I found that training in the 5 to 12 reps range works well. And I chose 5 to 12 because we're going to change reps every workout. The number of reps you actually do doesn't really matter that much. And there's a study published by Schoenfeld and colleagues in 2017 that's shown that. And you've probably heard about that, Juma, but trainers more and more talk about, you can hypertrophy when you train in the 20 or maybe up to 30 reps. But it's more efficient if you train in the 5 to 12 reps range, and you also build quite a bit of strength, which you don't when you train with 20 or 30 reps. You do build strength, but you don't build as much.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do, though, with your reps, most of these reps can work, but what works even better is varying reps every workout. This is called DUP for daily undulating periodization, and I would refer people to a great review that's been done by Greg Nuckols, where he's found that periodized training, and most of the data came from DUP style periodized training, they gain strength on average 22% faster than non-periodized training. So any reps can work, But if you change reps every workout, you're actually going to build strength faster. And we know that strength is closely related to hypertrophy. So it's still a goal to increase your strength when you're training for mass. And so you're going to vary reps every workout. So you gain strength faster, which will help you gain muscle faster down the road. So for reps, we're doing 5 to 12 reps, and we're going to change every workout. Now, I wanted to keep this simple because let's say today I have you do 5 reps, and the next workout I have you do 10 reps. Are you going to know how heavy you should lift for 10 reps? You kind of guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to do this model and change reps that much. I've kept it easy, and the easy way is going to be like this. Week 1, you're training your whole body 3 times. First workout, you're going to do 5 reps. That's Monday. Let's say it's Monday. Second workout on Wednesday, you're going to do 6 reps. And third workout on Friday, you're going to do 7 reps. So you're doing 5, 6, 7. That's pretty easy. Now, some people may say, oh, it's not really DUP, you should change reps more. I would respond, well, look, this is a beginner. Joe is a beginner here. He doesn't need to go that complex with his training, and just doing 5, 6, 7 that way is probably going to get him most of the gains that he could have gotten with a much more complex program that would have been a headache to work with. So week 1 is 5, 6, 7. Week 2 is 6, 7, 8. Week 3 is 7, 8, 9. You see where I'm going with this. Week 4 is 8, 9, 10. Week 5 is 9, 10, 11. And week 6 is 10, 11, 12. So we've covered the whole range in 6 weeks, going from 5 to 12. Every week we do plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, and then minus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, just like that for 6 weeks. And you're going to do this 6-week mesocycle, take a week off, and rinse and repeat until you stop making gains every workout. You want to increase your weight every workout if you can, or at least you want to use the same weight and do your extra rep. So let's say Monday you do 5 reps with 100 pounds. Well, on Wednesday, you're going to try and do 6 reps with the same weight. And on Friday, you're going to try and do 7 reps with the same weight. When you're a beginner, you should actually make progress even faster than that. Okay, so this covers the reps. Any questions so far?
Yeah, let's just mention a bit, like a typical thing that people do when they're making a new program is like switching exercises too frequently. Yeah. Now, why isn't that a good idea to do?
Right. Well, I was wondering if we would talk about this. This is a big question I've pondering about and over like for a long time. And recently, I kind of revisited the question, and I went on Facebook and I've discussed it with people I really look up to in this field. So I had discussions with Lyle McDonald, Eric Helms, Greg Knuckles, and Mike Israetel. Now, this is interesting because Mike Israetel is of the opinion that you should change your exercises every mesocycle. So he says that when let's say you come back from your week off, you should do new exercises. Maybe not change everything, but make some changes. Whereas, on the other hand, Lyle McDonald, Eric Helms, and Greg Knuckles said that you don't need to change your exercises to progress and that there is no extra benefits from changing exercises to build muscle faster. Okay, so this is the only question we're talking about. Maybe there would be other benefits to changing exercises more often, say for variety, people who keeps training fun, or for injuries, of course, you'll have to change exercises. But just for building muscle, these guys said you don't have to. And I tend to agree with them, with that opinion. I look to Olympic weightlifters and powerlifters These guys are some of the biggest and baddest athletes, and they do more or less, bless you, they do
Thank you.
more or less the same exercises for their whole career, you know? So if they had to change exercises to build muscle faster, they would probably do it. They would be doing it. So, like you said, beginners often change exercises because they're told that they should, and they overcomplicate things. And it actually slows them down because they're not building strength fast enough. When you're just starting out, most of your gains in strength will be from neuromuscular adaptations. So it's actually controlling your muscles and helping them contract at the same time in the right order so you can really actually make them work. And at the beginning, you're really weak because you have poor control over your muscle. As you gain some strength, then you really start stressing your muscle enough so that they're working hard, and then you're building muscle tissue, muscle mass. So don't change your exercises too often when you're beginning. And actually, you may not even need to change them throughout your career. So this is why I gave my basic set of exercises at the beginning. And if you like doing those, you could be doing those for a long time before needing any change at all.
Excellent. Now, I would agree with you on not changing it too often, because I think a lot of people they hear that, oh, you need to change training program to confuse your muscles because they adapt to it, and I'm like, well, if you vary your sets, your reps, your rest, like there's a million things you can do to make variations in your program. Another thing when it comes to exercises is, like, if you're a power lifter, you have to do like bench press, squats, and deadlifts.
Yeah.
But is that the case when it comes to muscle hypertrophy?
No, you don't have to do them. So that's why I said you can use your favorite exercises. If you don't want to do squats, you like leg presses, you want to work your legs, do leg presses. I was at the International Congress on Physical Activity and Public Health in Sydney. I think it was in 2015. And we had this big researcher, like keynote speaker, people asking him. He was presenting on high intensity interval training versus continuous, like long, slow, steady state cardio. And he said, people ask me, should I do high intensity training or should I do low intensity training? And I always say, yes, do them. So that would be my answer as well. If you like leg presses and you're going to do them, and maybe because you like them, you're going to push a little harder, then you don't need to do squats. Do the leg presses. You don't need to do squats to build muscle, and you don't need to do deadlifts. I've recommended these exercises because they work a lot of muscles at the same time, but you don't need to do them.
It's basically more bang for your buck. That's
Right.
basically
Yeah.
with these exercises, you just activate more muscle groups in the less amount of time. So if you were to switch the squat, you would probably need more exercises to compensate for what you're missing out on the squat. But when it comes to muscle growth, you don't have to do anything when it comes to exercises.
No, you don't have to do specific exercises. Most exercises, I think, will grow muscle. Like you said, some of them will work out more muscles at the same time, so you get more bang for your buck, but you don't need to do those if you don't like them. I have another point on changing exercises, and that point is, you said people are told they need to change exercises often to confuse their muscles. And this is kind of losing the point, which is to make progress. And a problem with hypertrophy is a lot of people weigh themselves on the scale. And this is a measure that's influenced by many things, not just your training. Whereas looking at how heavy you lift is a measure that's closer to what you're actually doing. And I like having at least one exercise that I keep over time and that I test over and over time that I can see progress with. It could be the bench press, it could be chin-ups. It has to be an exercise that you can measure at least every 6 weeks and see if your last mesocycle has helped you make any gains on it. Now, if you're changing exercises all the time, you're not even measuring your progress strength-wise in the gym. So how do you know you're making any progress? So that's another argument against changing exercises all the time.
Yeah, that's a very good point, what you mentioned there. Now, moving forward to the next level, how would things change when it comes to how you would periodize things? Like, let's say Joe, who's a beginner, is now done this program for several months, and then he's starting to not see the same progress. What would the next step be?
Okay, so I will answer your question. Just before that, I just want to cover briefly sets, rest, and training to failure within this starter program. Sets are going to be 2 sets the first time you do the program for each exercise. You're doing 14 sets per workout. The second time you do it over, you're going to do 3 sets, and the third time you're going to do 4 sets. And then you'll stay at 4 sets and you'll repeat this 6-week cycle over and over. Rest between sets, I've kept that simple at 2 minutes. And there's a study why 2 minutes. For hypertrophy style training for a long time, people were recommending 1 minute. So you would get more of a hormonal response that way. But I think we're finding in recent years that the hormonal response is not as important as we used to think it was. So a study, this one published in 2005, which is still a long time ago, Athenian and I'll send you all the links, Juma, so if people want to look these up, they can look at your show notes. That study found that 2 minutes was as effective as 5 minutes for building muscle. So you should wait longer than a minute, but you don't need to wait as long as strength training, 5 minutes. 2 minutes works fine. So for hypertrophy, I'm going to recommend 2 minutes here between sets. The last point is, and the last variable is training to failure. I will borrow an idea from Dr. Mike Zordos here. Look up to this guy as well. I like what he does. And Mike recommends that people train to failure, if they want to do it, only on Friday. Because if you train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have 2 days to recover between Friday and the next Monday. So this gives you more time, so you can go harder with your training on Friday. Whereas on the other days, you only have 1 day to recover. So on those days, you're going to keep 2 reps in the tank when you're lifting. So that means that if you could do 12 reps with a gun to your head with a given weight, you're going to do only 10 reps on Monday and Wednesday. On Friday, you're going to go all out and train to failure. That covers the basic, the key training variables for this mesocycle and this periodization plan for a beginner. I will answer your question now. What should Joe do when this program stops working? By the way, I think Joe can probably do this for 6 months. So this is a 6-week program. If you do it twice, it's 3 months. If you do it 4 times, it's 6 months. So I think Joe can probably do it 4 times and still make gains almost every workout. What happens when you cannot increase your reps from one day? So that you remember, Monday is 5 at the beginning, 5 reps, 6 reps on Wednesday, 7 reps on Friday. Let's say you start the cycle over, and then Monday you do 5, Wednesday you do 5, and Friday you do 6. Okay, you can increase your reps once in the cycle. You're going to keep doing it until you get no gains for 2 workouts in a row. So that's going to be Monday, 5 reps, Wednesday, 5 reps, Friday, 5 reps. You're stuck. When that happens, you're going to deload. And I'm taking this idea from Practical Programming for Strength Training, the book I mentioned. Just deload. So deloading lets you get more juice out of the same workout plan. Because think about it. You've been doing this cycle over and over for about 6 months, and you've made great gains with it. This is the program that lets you make gains the fastest because you're making gains every time you work out. That's wonderful. So as long as you can stay in that realm, stay there. You don't want to change it too much because, hey, it's working great. And the best workout plan for you, I say that often, is the workout plan that has worked the best for you before. When I get a new client, one thing I'll ask is, what's worked best for you? And a lot of times I will repeat what has worked best for the client, maybe with some changes. So you've been doing this program for 6 months. You've made gains every workout. Now you're stuck at 5 reps Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're going to deload. Deloading is you're going to cut weights 10%. So let's say that for 5 reps you were doing 100 pounds. You're going to lower that to 90 pounds and you're going to start the cycle over. So no matter which week you were in, you're going to start the cycle over to week 1, which is 5, 6, and 7 reps. The reason you do that is you also want to cut volume when you deload. And let's say you're in week 5 and you're doing sets of 9, 10, and 11 reps. By cutting back to week 1 with 5, 6, 7 reps, you're almost cutting your volume in half looking at the reps. Now, obviously, since you're doing lower reps, you're going to increase your weight a little bit. So you're not really cutting your volume in half. You're cutting your reps in half. You're going to be cutting your volume about 30% that way. So when you get stuck on this beginner program, 3 times, 3 workouts, you cannot increase the weight, you deload, you're going to deload twice that way. Just by deloading, it's going to give your body time to wipe away fatigue, and you can start making more newbie gains on this program. But at some point, you're really going to expand this program. It's completely spent. There's nothing more to draw from it. And then, unfortunately, you're going to move up to the intermediate level. All right. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Juma? Yeah, we're ready? Great. So I've kept it simple. And this is mostly also what Ripito and Baker recommend in their book. You're going to keep the same 6-week cycle. The major difference is you're going to introduce an easy day or light day. This is what they call it. So on Wednesday, this is not anymore a workout where you're trying to do an extra rep and where you're trying to make progress. Wednesday is a workout that helps you recover. And you you only want to be making progress between Monday and Friday. So Monday, you're going to do your workout following the same rep sets and recommendations as before. You try and improve on that day. Wednesday, you take it easy. You're going to use 75% of Monday's weights to do Wednesday's repetitions and sets. So this is going to be an easy day. You're going to finish your sets with 4, maybe 5 reps in the tank. So this is an easy day. And if you're like me when I was starting out, maybe you were like that, Juma, too. You didn't want to hold back. Having an easy day was like wasting time. But trust me, you do want to have this easy day because this day lets you recover and prepare for Friday. And on Friday, you're going to aim for a new PR, a new personal best, a new record. You're also going to use this same program for the next 6 weeks and repeat those until they stop working. When they don't, and you make no gains for 2 weeks in a row, you're going to deload. So the difference here is on the beginner program, it was 2 workouts in the row. On the intermediate program, you only really know if you've made progress on Friday. So Friday is your most important day of your week, and you want to make sure you make progress on that day. If you miss your Friday, then you know you're going to train another week before you know if you've made any progress at all. If you miss that next Friday, then you've probably built up fatigue and you need to deload. You're going to deload the same way. You're going to reduce weights 10% and start back at the beginning of the cycle. You can probably ride this intermediate level cycle for another 6 months before you need to move into more advanced level training. And again, as long as you can ride it, do it, because you're still making gains every week. And a lot of lifters will be jealous. You know, I wish I made gains every week. And so if you can make them, make them. Keep your program simple. It's worked well up to that point. Keep doing it. Milk it for all it's worth. And when it stops producing results, progress, as measured by making gains on the Friday, then you need to move to advanced level.
Okay, excellent. Now, is it like, do you use the same rules here when it comes to failure training, that you'll only do failure on Fridays?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Okay. Now, let's move forward to how would you progress to the advanced level? What would change then?
Right. Well, for the advanced level, I kind of took the easy path here because, like I said in the book, there are many different examples of advanced level training. And the thing here is that it's different. It's different for many lifters. And as a lifter, when you get to that point, you'll probably have to experiment to find out which one works best for you. If you want to experiment, you're going to spend time finding out what works best. You can get the book by Repito and Baker. You'll find many examples in there. You can also hire a good trainer. And if you haven't hired a trainer up to that point, that would be a good point to hire one, because this is where all the experience and the knowledge of that trainer will help you save a lot of time experimenting with trying different programs that are more advanced. I'll still give you a pointer, which is never forget that your goal here is to make progress. So whatever workout plan you follow when you get more advanced, you know that you can't make progress every week anymore, but you want to see progress maybe at least once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks. And don't start making the mistake of changing too many things and losing track of your progress. Keep doing that at least 1 or 2 exercises that you measure over and over, and make sure you're making progress. That would be my pointer and the key thing to make sure as you get more advanced.
Excellent. Now, if you were to wrap this up, this topic that we're talking about,
Sure.
what would be your take-home message?
Yeah, so my take-home message is keep it simple. Joe, you're a beginner. I know you've seen a lot of stuff on the internet and books, and you're not sure where to start. You can start with this basic program. Do it over and over. You're going to find out by yourself that it works, because you're going to get stronger every time you work out. So this is wonderful. You don't have to believe me. You just do it and you see for yourself. Focus on the basics, which is making progress every time you work out. You want to get stronger, that is, lift more weights for the same amount of reps, or do more reps with the same weight. And as long as you're doing that, you're making progress and you're in great shape.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carl, for taking the time to do this podcast. Now, I know you have actually designed an app which you can track your progress, and you could also, it actually helps you with adjusting a lot of things as you get strong. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking about strategies to build muscle faster.
Hmm.
And this is what you want. Well, I think you'll like that app. In the past 2 years, since getting my PhD with a small team, I've been building this app that helps you build muscle faster using AI. And it applies all the strategies we've been talking about today automatically and many more as well. And it even applies them in a more advanced way because the AI in the app can do computations on the fly that you wouldn't be able to do by yourself with a pen and a paper. I mentioned this briefly when talking about DUP. I said I will keep DUP simple because it's hard to guess how heavy you can lift for 10 reps when you've done 5 reps on your last workout. Well, you don't need to guess if you use an app because the app can compute all of this for you. So what you get with this app is a smart program that grows automatically with you as you gain muscle. When you create your account, you get a program that starts at your level in about 7 taps. So it's a one-time setup. Then your program will level up with you as you become more experienced, bigger, and stronger. And it also updates automatically every time you do it with the optimal reps and set for you, so you always build muscle as fast as possible. This was it's been my number one passion for a long time, and I've worked as a personal trainer. And the problem when you're a personal trainer is you always have to start over, and you have to spend a lot of time creating a custom program for your clients. So you have to charge them a lot of money. But not everyone can afford a personal trainer. And one thing I want to do with this is make it a lot cheaper to get the same kind of customization for your programs that you would get with a real human trainer, but instead you're getting a virtual artificial intelligence trainer. So this thing is like a trainer in your pocket that's 10 times cheaper than a human trainer. It's available 24/7 and it's always up to date. I keep it up to date with the science. I love reading about building muscle, and I make sure that when you lift with this app, you're always lifting with the best methods to build muscle fast. So Juma, what I'd like to do is offer everyone listening their first month free if they want to check it out. So if you'd like to learn more and start building muscle faster using AI and get your first month free because you're listening to this podcast, just go to drmuscleapp.com/Juma. So that's a special page I've set up for your listeners, Juma. The URL is drmuscleapp.com/Juma. So thanks a lot, man. That was a
Thank you.
great interview.
Thank
And
you.
again, it's an honor to be on your podcast. You've had some amazing guests, and I really like what you're doing.
Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time. I'll link I'll put the link in the description, and people can check out the app if they want. If they want
I
to.
would be honored, and they can email us, get in touch with us. I'm sure you have many smart listeners, and I look forward to interacting and serving this community of people. It's really a pleasure and a dream come true for me.
Perfect. Now, is this app available on Android and iPhones?
Yes, both phones.
Okay, and what's the cost of the app?
Okay, well, I could tell you the cost, but here's the problem. We're raising prices
Hmm.
as we roll out new features. So I'm afraid that if I mention the cost on your podcast today, people who listened to it maybe a year ago, a year later, are going to be pissed off they didn't get the cheaper cost, right? So I would invite people to go to our website and find out the cost right now. At any rate, they can still get their first month free via the link I created for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this podcast, and thank you so much for also offering your generous offer to my listeners. Pleasure to have you on, Carl. I don't know what time it is in Canada now, but it's almost bedtime for me here in
Uh,
Norway.
uh,
So once again, thank you so much, and we'll speak soon again.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right, Carl. Bye bye.